Letter confession. Maybe if I write a full confession, I can find some peace and get some rest. I'm Alice. This weekend, Don and I would have been married 53 years, but instead, I'm alone and hurting, and horrible streams of memories are coming back to haunt me. There is no excuse for what I did. Thankfully, my guilt and shame made me straighten up and cross the line about 50 years ago. Why didn't I come clean then? Don was from a town in another state. We met when he came here for a company business meeting. We had dinner together a couple times, and it was almost love at first sight for both of us. 6 months later, Don had it all worked out and got a transfer to the local office. About 3 months after he arrived, we got engaged, and 4 months later, we were married. The problem started on our wedding day. We had a beautiful wedding and reception. Well, at least I thought so until the end of the reception. Cliff was Don's best man, and that's where the trouble started. Cliff and I had been high school buddies since he came to town in 5th grade. In high school, we dated and became a couple in high school. On my senior night, we slipped out of a party we went to, and I broke up my girly life. We both went to the same university, were in the same engineering program, and spent a lot of time together. I dated very few other guys, and he dated a few girls. Cliff was a fantastic lover, and I was always happy to climb into bed with him. We were great lovers, but in the latter half of his senior year, we both started thinking and realizing that marriage wasn't right for us. We didn't have any real problems, but we just seemed to drift into different adult ideas of what we wanted out of life. Upon graduation, he enlisted in the military. I dated more guys in the last year and a half of school than I had in the previous 6 years. During his first leave when he came home, we both confirmed that we weren't right for each other. We agreed to stay friends and made love on the last night of his vacation. And yes, we stayed friends and even did it occasionally. Cliff served his 2 years, came home, and took a job at the same large engineering firm I had joined the year before. I was shocked when he walked in on his first day on the job. Our friendship persisted, and we occasionally went out together. 6 months after Cliff returned, however, he was already married to a pretty girl from the East Coast town where he was serving. I didn't realize at the time that the last 3 times I made love to him, he was already engaged. Of course, that was the end of our relationship. I wasn't hurt in the slightest, and I was happy for both of them. Okay, readers, don't get ahead of yourself, but yes, this is where Don was transferred. He came here for that business meeting a few months after Cliff got married. As it turned out, Don and Cliff had worked together on the same project a bit before, and so they became good friends pretty quickly. When things got serious between Don and I, Cliff never said a word about our previous relationship. Hence why Don asked Cliff to be his best man. So, back to the wedding. The wedding was very big, as I was a relatively prominent and long-time member of the community in my family. The ceremony was beautiful, and the reception was elegant. I was as happy as can be until a group of our co-workers separated us and started pouring drinks for us to get drunk. They had succeeded with Don, and they were trying to do the same with me, but I wasn't going to do it. It was my wedding night, and there were better things to do than get drunk. By midnight, my parents and most of the older people, over 40, had left. The younger group was inebriated with champagne. One thing was obvious. Mom and Dad had done well to reserve hotel rooms for the entire younger generation. Very few of them could even find their cars, let alone drive them. I finally decided that was enough and tried to get to Don. I found him sitting in a chair, and he was completely out of it. I wanted to cry, and I didn't know what to do. About the time my despair reached its limit, I felt someone's hand take my elbow. Turning around, I looked at Cliff. He obviously hadn't joined in the drinking. His wife, Jerry, couldn't attend. She was pregnant and was about a month away from giving birth. She wasn't feeling well and stayed with her mother until the birth. When they reached the end, Cliff was going to take a vacation and fly back east to be with her. He asked me if I wanted him to help carry Don to our room, and I quickly said yes. The two of us carried Don to his room and put him to bed. By the time we were done, I was really feeling sorry for myself. Our wedding night and a husband who was high. No desire to go down to the bar and get a cup of coffee? Yes, I would, but I'm still in my wedding dress. It's late and there won't be many people around and no one will care. Come on, let's go. I'd love to have a cup. What the hell? Dress or no dress, going for a cup of coffee was better than sitting in a room with a stoned husband and feeling sorry for myself. I grabbed my purse and we headed for the elevator and the bar. We drank coffee and chatted. Cliff told me about the situation with Jerry. It was uncomfortable, but it didn't matter. He repeated several times that it was hard for her to be gone for more than 2 weeks and he missed her. The bright spot was that he would fly down and be with her next weekend. After that, she was only supposed to have 3 weeks before she went into labor. We finished our coffee and went back upstairs. He walked me to my room and told me how much he enjoyed being with me again. With those words, he pulled me to him and we kissed. Well, the kiss turned out to be more than a friendly goodnight kiss. I felt myself pressed against him, his hand massaging my buttocks through my wedding dress. I reluctantly pushed him away and prepared to enter the room. I dreaded going back to the room, and just before I slid the key card into the slot, I turned to him and confirmed that he was a good man. Without even thinking, I asked if the best man was supposed to take care of the bride and groom until they left. At that question, a slight smile appeared on Cliff's face. Although I was far from drunk, I still felt a slight glow of joy. I know that if it had been anyone other than Cliff in our past relationship, the following remarks would never have happened. I told him that the bride needed help, and I did. I don't think it's right that the bride doesn't feel her husband in her on her wedding night. If the groom is dysfunctional, isn't it the best man's responsibility to formalize the bride on her wedding night? I don't need to tell you how he responded. I slid the key card into the slot, quietly opened the door, and it was obvious that Don was out. I closed the door quietly, and we headed for Cliff's room. I didn't need anyone to tell me that this wasn't something I should be doing, especially on my wedding night. But I was so mad at Don that I quickly reasoned that it was his way and that every bride was entitled to love on her wedding night. It only took a few moments before I took off my dress. Only then did I remember that I had a surprise for Don. I wasn't wearing any panties. Cliff noticed this immediately and asked if I felt inappropriate standing at the altar with all those people and no panties. I told him that I felt naughty, and during the ceremony, when I thought about it, I was almost embarrassed. He smiled and told me that my surprise was not wasted. He really appreciated it, and he pushed me onto the bed. It was a warm, good, and familiar feeling when I was with Cliff, and he hadn't lost any of his experience in fully satisfying me. At that moment, I felt sorry that the two of us weren't more compatible. He had so many wonderful qualities, but our marriage would never have worked out. We were a great party couple and we were fantastic in bed, but that was where it ended. The fact that he came back to me was so good that we did it a second time. In the last couple hours, I had completely forgotten about Don. My body belonged to Cliff. Then it all came crashing down on me with a scream. I looked at the clock. The time was approaching 5 in the morning. I jumped out of bed, threw on my robe as best I could, and rushed to my room. I breathed a sigh of relief when I opened the door and saw Don right where we left him. I undressed, washed my face, took care of my toiletries, and climbed into bed next to Don. I was able to sleep late since our flight to Acapulco wasn't until the afternoon. I lay there for a while, looking at him and confirming that I really did love him. The agony of remorse for what had happened made me feel bad, and I fell asleep in tears. I woke up to the feeling of a hand rubbing my body and sunlight streaming through a small opening in the curtains. It only took a moment before I realized that Don was sitting behind me and stroking me. I reached up and started to turn toward him. "Good morning, Mrs. Rapp. Beautiful wife. I'm so sorry I passed out tonight. I'll make it up to you whenever and however you want. I'm sorry. I should have been stronger." I was surprised that instead of displaying a blatant hangover, he seemed rested, alert, and ready to go. Much later, I learned that he has a low tolerance for alcohol. He usually passes out long before he gets really drunk. That's why he rarely suffers hangovers. I gasped, remembering what had happened. But I quickly came to my senses and told him I loved him, and we'd work things out on our honeymoon, and quickly changed the subject to packing, getting something to eat, and getting to the airport. I struggled with the thought that a few hours after my wedding, I had already been unfaithful. It was all I could do to hold back the tears. And just about the time I thought I had everything under control, memories of Cliff came flooding back. The tears rolled down, and Don was immediately at my side, wanting to know what was wrong. I lied.